Hello, and welcome to my Friday evening. Today I wanted to talk about branding in the luxury market, and I thought, you know what, why not do that in the normal way I welcome my weekend, which is typically with a bottle of sparkling wine. So I decided to do that today with a champagne. We're going to talk about luxury, and it's a theme. It's a topic that I didn't really want to rush through. And instead of making those videos where we kind of rush through information and trying to get as much as we can in very little time, today I kind of wanted to maybe tone it down and calm things down. So if you have the time, sit down, maybe grab a sparkling wine or just a wine in general, or tea if you don't like any type of wine or alcohol. But yeah, I decided to talk about the luxury market and branding in general in the company of one of my favorite beverages, which is champagne. It's a great pleasure for me to enjoy that. If you don't know, my father writes about wine, and so I kind of grew up around the idea of wine and the history of many wine houses and vineyards, wine producers, and champagne is one of those that has the region of Champagne has established itself as a luxury brand throughout history. So it's with great pleasure that I can perhaps talk about the subject while drinking a bit of wine in your company. So if you'll indulge me, we'll open this wine. This is a bottle of Champagne Montauban. It is not, I would say, a top house for champagne. It's not one of the most glamorous ones. You have the mass market ones, well, not mass market, but the more popular ones, which would be perhaps Veuve Clicquot, Moet Chandon. Those are kind of the most popular ones, and then you have other houses that produce less bottles of champagne, but they are incredible. And this one is a good one. I would say the quality is very, very good for the price. You can find this wine for $40, 40 plus, and I think it really is a good value for the money. Anyway, a few details here since we're not rushing through this video. Opening a bottle of champagne can be a serious business, so it needs to be cool. If it's too warm, it may be that it pops, the cork just pops, and you can even have an accident if you're sort of pointing the bottle towards someone. So it can be a serious thing. Just make sure that your bottle is not too warm, that it's cool, at least cool. Serving temperature should be between 8 and 10 degrees. That's normally what the literature says. I do like to have it slightly cooler than that. To me, between 6 and 7 is an ideal temperature. Mind you, when you pour your champagne, your wine, especially if it's a warm day, and it is a warm day today, it's summer in Montreal. So typically, it will lose 3 degrees Celsius. And I'm talking about Celsius, by the way. In 8 to 10 degrees serving temperature would be in Fahrenheit, would be something about 45 and 50 Fahrenheit. Anyway, I like it a little bit cooler, so when I pour it into my proper champagne glass, it's important if you don't have proper champagne glasses and you like it and you enjoy drinking sparkling wine, I would definitely recommend you buy something like that instead of the flute, which is it has been very popular throughout the years, but it's not the best one. It really doesn't help the flavors and the perfume of the wine to show. But anyway, when you pour your champagne, you typically lose in 10 minutes. You lose 3 degrees Celsius. So that's why I like it slightly cooler. It keeps my glass cooler for longer and in an enjoyable temperature. So let's pop this up the idea here is not to make too much noise. I think, if I'm being honest, it actually was a little bit loud to my taste. I usually like it to be very quiet. It doesn't need to. You don't need to pop it up like in the Formula One podiums. That's not the point. The point is to, you have carbon dioxide here, and as you pour it, it will release it anyway. So you don't want to spend and waste all your bubbles or your fizziness just by opening the wine. So with the help of a cloth, something to help me sort of grab the bottle and serve. Many people will serve from the using the traditional maneuver. You don't have to do that, obviously. You can just grab it and pour. Now, one thing that is important that I actually learned with my father is when you pour it, allow the glass to cool down a bit. This glass was cold before I put it in the fridge a bit for a few minutes, and it was cool to the touch. That's an ideal thing, ideal temperature. But since I'm recording this video and I'm taking a little bit of time to go through it, it was a little bit warm. So I'd rather pour a little bit of champagne now and kind of roll it around, if you will, like so, and allow the glass to cool a bit. Also, what you want to do, I'm no champagne expert, I'm no wine expert, that's my father, but I've accumulated a little bit of experience through, maybe through him, and ended up learning a lot from here throughout the years. And this is one of the tricks that I kind of learned. Cool down the glass. It will be a much more enjoyable experience if you do that. Champagne is something that is delicate, so you don't want to be too aggressive when initiating your process of drinking it. In most the glass is slightly cooler. Put some of the champagne in your mouth and keep it there for a bit, to sort of introduce your palate to the champagne, like so. Very nice champagne. And now you can actually pour a normal glass, which shouldn't be too much. I typically pour in small doses, very small glasses, very small quantities in my glass, so it doesn't get too warm as I'm drinking. Now you wanna close your champagne, unless you're gonna drink it quite fast with friends, and a bottle might not last too long. But if you're not drinking fast, then I would definitely recommend you use something like that. This one is from Cuisinart. It's a sort of champagne stopper, and it will prevent all the gas, all the carbon dioxide to leave the bottle. So I'll put it back into the bucket, the ice bucket, and leave it here for a bit. We will maintain the temperature of the bottle, which is important, and hopefully we can enjoy this, through a few hours. Very beautiful, fine bubbles, and definitely very yeasty. Anyway, let's talk about luxury, the luxury market, and arguably champagne. We're gonna debate that a bit. Is it luxury? Is it true luxury? Is it not? What defines luxury? Why would a bottle of champagne be a luxury product? We'll go through those aspects. But yeah, I wanted to talk about branding in general. It's not just about luxury, but branding and the luxury market. So sort of comparing one thing to the other, how branding works in general, and then how that was applied to the luxury market in luxury brands like some of the ones that we're going to cover today. The example of champagne, for example, is an interesting one because it's a little bit unique, and there are aspects to it. There are elements to it that are vastly different from other types of markets, I would say. But we can talk about how it positioned itself, you know, throughout time. One of the things that Champagne has is the name, the region. The region of Champagne is the only one that can actually call their sparkling wine Champagne. So it became a brand once once the French realized that other people, other winemakers in the world were making sparkling wine and then naming it Champagne. So it was important for them to kind of mark, okay, no, not everything is Champagne. This is Champagne. It needs to come from the region, from that specific region in France. And obviously, there are other elements to Champagne. In order to be called Champagne, there are specific grapes that you need to use, specific production methods that you need to use, and in certain a lot of procedures that you need to follow. But overall, it became a brand once the French realized, okay, we need to protect this region and the quality of what we're doing in the eyes of the consumer. So that became later on also, I would say, an element of price, because arguably the French were able to keep the prices of champagne high due to the branding of champagne. So, due to the name, the champagne name itself is arguably again a synonym of a premium item, a premium product. Therefore, allowing the producers of champagne to market their wines, with higher prices. There is always this correlation between quality and price, and I think everyone that sort of browsed through different brands in whatever category has seen that quality doesn't necessarily translate into price, and price doesn't necessarily translate into quality. An example of that, and again, if we talk about Champagne, Champagne is one region. We have other regions in the world that are also producing sparkling wine of great quality. Champagne has, I understand that obviously the quality is there. Typically, Champagne will have quality embedded into it, but if you think of other competitors like Cava, for example, Cava is produced in Spain. In Cava, more specifically, you have Prosecco, which is produced in a different method. So you might say, well, it's a completely different thing. But Cava is produced much like in the same way as Champagne. Different grapes and perhaps different time in the cellars being fermented, but Cava is pretty much comparable to Champagne. To me, if you get a good Cava, it can be way better than average Champagne, I would say, and sometimes even as great champagnes. But the quality price aspect can be seen in many categories. For example, if you take the clothing space, the clothing industry, the apparel, fashion and apparel, you have some brands that that are mass market and are trying to sell something fashionable but still cheap and very, very accessible. Like H&M would be an example of that. So in the lower categories, in the lower layers of each industry, maybe wine or fashion and apparel, the higher the price, usually there will be a big step in quality. Usually, not necessarily, obviously, but there can be. Usually, there will be if you have something for $30, and then you see another product for $60. Usually, you have a big step in quality. Now, as you go up in the layers, in the categories, as you go up in price and you move towards the more premium goods and premium items, and perhaps even the luxury items, and I will talk about the premium and luxury distinction in a bit, but as you move up, you don't necessarily translate that experience, the price that you pay into that much of a difference in quality. So if you're paying $1,000 for something, let's say that you have a bottle of champagne that costs $1,000, and then you have another one that costs $5,000. Well, arguably, the one that costs $5,000 is most probably not 5 times better than the champagne for $1,000. It's probably slightly better. So what I mean by that is that if you have a graph, you would see that as price increases, the difference in quality diminishes. The correlation between quality and price will diminish over time or as you go up in price. So I'll give you an example. So we were talking about H&M, and H&M is a if you know H&M is a very accessible brand. You have clothes that are kind of in tune with the fashion and the trends, but it's trying to keep the prices really low. It's a low end, we could say, brand. I would say, I think. But then you have, for example, Zara, which is, in my view, a step up. Zara is in my opinion, again, considerably better in terms of quality than H&M. And the price is not. We're not talking about too much. We're talking about an increasing price, certainly, but maybe 30%, 40%. That is usually what I would see in terms of prices between these two. Now, if you move to a different category, maybe a more premium one, and just on top of my mind, Massimo Dutti. Massimo Dutti, by the way, is the same house, is the same owner of Zara. Zara and Massimo Dutti belong to the same owner. But Zara is sort of the mid-range there, and Massimo Dutti is considered the higher end, the premium brand of the same house, of the same conglomerate. So Massimo Dutti is visibly higher quality. I mean, literally, and I actually really like Massimo Dutti. Is the one that it's my kind of go-to. But if you compare the quality between Zara and the Zara products are perhaps half the price of Massimo Dutti, I think. I would say that half the price, or maybe 70% less. Massimo Dutti being 70%, maybe 60% higher in terms of price, which is not a lot. In the grand scheme of things, is not that much, but you get a lot more quality for 60% more, or maybe perhaps 100% more. Very visible difference. But when you go, say, from Massimo Dutti to, let's say, Armani, which is, we're talking about this time perhaps luxury indeed, or at least a very high-end brand. In my opinion, again, I don't think Armani has a lot more quality than Massimo Dutti. I think there is a difference in quality, yes, surely, but I don't think it represents, because Armani would cost perhaps 4 times what Massimo Dutti charges, maybe 3 times, 4 times. That will be I think the average. But it's not 3 times better. It's not 3 times more quality. It's perhaps 30% more quality, maybe 40% more quality. But in my opinion, if I'm being honest, I think Massimo Dutti and Armani are not that different in terms of quality. The brand itself, the name and the philosophy, that is another thing. That is what perhaps allowed them to charge what they do. But in terms of raw materials and the quality of the manufacturing process and methods, I think Massimo Dutti is fairly close to the Armani standards. Again, that's my opinion. So as you move up and up, the difference in quality diminishes. If you take Armani, then, which we talked about, so if you take Armani and then you take, I don't know, Prada, and Anyway, as you go up in price, the quality does not translate. The correlation between price and quality doesn't doesn't continue uh, um, regularly. I would say. So another example, if you talk about, let's talk about suits, for example. You have maybe Zara suits, which cost, I've no idea how much Zara suits cost, but let's say they cost $300, right? Then you have Massimo Dutti suits, which will cost maybe $600. And then you have Suit Supply, which will cost 800, maybe $900, $1,000 perhaps. But the difference in quality between those three is huge. The Zara suits, I know for a fact, I don't, personal opinion again, I don't think they're good. I think they're not good quality. Massimo Dutti suits are more of a quality, I would say quality materials at least, and I think they're quality. Now, if you take Suit Supply, I have some suits from Suit Supply, and I think they're great. I think the quality, especially for the price you're paying, is really really good. Now, if you go way high, if you go way higher in that category, suits, you would go and talk about Savile Row. You would talk about Huntsman in London. Well, that is 10 times the price. A suit from Huntsman can cost $10,000, if not more. Now, for $10,000, is it 10 times better than Suit Supply? It is not. Obviously, there is a big difference here. There's a big difference between the Huntsman is actual luxury. So obviously, we're talking about bespoke quality. It is very visible difference. I'm not talking about that. It's definitely very, very different, including the experience. The experience is very, very different. Different. You have a tailor that will perhaps be with you for years in the process of making suits for you, but I'm talking about the ratio of price and quality. It is definitely not 10 times or 20 times the quality of a Suit Supply, for example. It might be 2 times, it might be even 3 times. The experience is a different thing, but in terms of quality, the ratio just diminishes. So as you go up, as you go higher in price, and you start entering that ultra premium and luxury market, you're not looking for something that is substantially more quality. You already have quality in the categories below that, which would be premium and perhaps ultra premium. But it's no longer just about the quality; it's about other aspects. It's about perhaps philosophy. It's about perhaps the story that the brand represents, heritage. It may be many things, but it's not just quality. So, in order for us to kind of put a framework into that and understand what does it mean to be a luxury brand, I think we can talk about three main pillars, three main things. The first one is quality. Quality needs to be, if it's luxury, it needs to have quality. The second pillar would be scarcity. And the third pillar would be philosophy. So let's talk about these three pillars and see how much we can cover of those three while I drink a little bit more of my champagne. When you're a brand and you're trying to convey, when you're trying to brand yourself as whatever category you're trying to enter, if you're a new brand, you will try to understand who your audience is. If you're using goods that are high quality, obviously you need to market yourself as high quality. So talking about those three pillars, let's talk about champagne and using different brands as well, obviously, but champagne and the luxury market in general. I would argue that all champagne have quality. It's very, in my opinion, again, I haven't seen a champagne that is not quality. You can argue if they are inferior to that, perhaps other champagne, or even inferior to a specific cava or even prosecco, that can be very good. But I wouldn't say you can have a champagne that doesn't have quality. Champagne has established has put in place a lot of restrictions exactly for that. So producers don't go too crazy and keep a certain standard of quality. So I think all champagne have quality. Now, the degree of quality, that's another thing. This champagne, for example, is quality. It is a good champagne. I recommend if you do have that wherever you are, if you're in Canada or if you're in Brazil or whatever, the US, whatever country you are, definitely recommend. I think it's a great price for the actual product. I think it really is good for the price that I'm paying. But if I compare to say Bollinger, which I happened to have tasted the other day, I think Bollinger is more quality. Well, it is also more expensive. A Bollinger bottle will be around $100, whereas this one is around $40. So obviously there is a huge difference here in price, but there's also a difference in quality. Now, if you go from a Bollinger, for example, to a Dom Perignon, which will cost perhaps $250, $300, is it three times better than a Bollinger? I personally don't think so. But Dom Perignon is obviously one of the hallmarks of very good champagne. It's definitely one of the best ones. Definitely one of the best ones. Perhaps not the best one. There are many other houses that produce less volume, but then very good vintage champagnes. And there's also the difference between normal cuvee, normal years, and which actually is many years. They used many years um, production for many years into one bottle. And then you have the vintage champagnes, which are like, this is a special year. So when a year is special, they bottle it and put it as a vintage champagne to be consumed, and it's a perfect expression of that year in particular. If you think of, for example, Louis Vuitton, if you go up right in the market, Louis Vuitton is definitely a luxury product. It's a luxury brand. Um, but if you compare Louis Vuitton, which has great quality, with Hermes, I think you will still find a lot of room for improvement. And there is a reason for that. In this case specifically, between Louis Vuitton and Hermes, well, nobody would say that Louis Vuitton doesn't have quality. Obviously, they have a lot of quality in their products, but Hermes is typically handmade. Everything is handmade. One bikini from Hermes, if you're a woman and you're interested in that type of thing, one bikini can take 40 hours because they have an artisan that is going to do that. It's completely handmade. So it's just on another type of level. Even if you compare big houses and luxury brands, you'll still find difference between those and difference in quality between those. But the more quality you have, typically, the more you can say you're luxury. You don't necessarily have quality and are luxury, but you can. The more quality you have, the more you can double down on saying that you are, in fact, a luxury brand. But there are the other pillars. Without the other pillars, you cannot consider yourself a luxury brand. You can consider yourself, for example, a premium brand, a high-end brand with quality. But if you don't have the other two, you're still not a luxury brand. So let's talk about the second pillar here. So going back to champagne here, some of the brands that are more popular, for example, Veuve Clicquot, or Moët Chandon. Moët Chandon, for example, I think they produce 30 million bottles per year. That is a lot. And you will have certain brands. I'm not sure how many this winemaker produces every year, but I know Bollinger, for example, because I've kind of read through some of that stuff and I follow them on Instagram. I think it's a very beautiful champagne. I really like it. For me, my personal favorite one is Bollinger. So Bollinger produces 2.5 million bottles per year. That is way less. It's more than 10 times less than what Moët Chandon produces. So arguably, you could say that Bollinger has at least the credentials to be more luxury than Moët Chandon, despite the fact that the difference in price is not that big. Bollinger is slightly more expensive than Moët Chandon, but again, in terms of credentials, because of the level of scarcity, it could be a more of a luxury item than Moët Chandon. the more scarcity you have, the higher typically you can charge, because there's just not enough of it. If you think of it, Bollinger, for example, even if there is a boom, which is something that we're going to debate in a bit, but even if there is a boom of sales and people start buying Bollinger a lot, um, um, you know, there's just not enough to go around. In a lot of countries, a lot of people want to consume champagne. That's why it drives also the prices higher. Louis Vuitton, for example, only sells in their own store. You cannot find Louis Vuitton articles in any store that is selling quality products. It needs to be in their store. So that alone represents a type of scarcity. Hermes is handmade, so obviously it's very difficult. And some products of Hermes, even if you do have the money and is willing to buy, sometimes you see something on their website, and if it's gone, it may be gone. It's handmade. That could be unique, and you're just not going to have it, despite the fact that you didn't have the money to buy it easily. It's just not available for everyone. So the element of scarcity is very strong there. Now, if we compare, for example, to Massimo Dutti, which again I would consider to be a high-end brand, a premium brand, um, the scarcity isn't really there. If you live in a place where they have Massimo Dutti, you can just go ahead and buy it, and they produce many pieces, many items of the same, or many pieces of the same item. So if you have a T-shirt or trousers or whatever, they produce thousands of these, and anyone who lives in a city where you have Massimo Dutti can just go there and buy a piece. And also for Massimo Dutti, I guess one of the things that we can argue is that they would like to sell more of Massimo Dutti, which means they would like, if they could double, if the company, I forgot the name of the company, Indexed, something like that, that owns Zara and Massimo Dutti, if they could double the sales for Massimo Dutti, double the amount of products that they are selling, they definitely would. Whereas if you have a luxury brand, that's not necessarily the case. They might not want to sell much more than they already sell, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So Massimo Dutti might want to sell to whoever wants to buy, whoever has the money, but luxury brands might not behave the same. In fact, I would argue that if you're a luxury brand, um, I mean, you're a business. Don't get me wrong. You want to grow your business, but you have to be very careful in how you do that, because if you just sell more, let's say a brand has an excellent year and they sold a lot more than they used to sell. Well, I would argue that that's going to hurt them the next year, because if you're a luxury product, the scarcity needs to be there. If everyone has that piece of clothing, or that item, that bag, or whatever the item is, it's no longer luxury. It's now accessible, and luxury typically needs to be almost inaccessible. The level of accessibility needs to be very, very low in order for you to distinguish yourself as a luxury brand. So I would argue that as a luxury brand, you want to sell for more expensive, but not necessarily more items, not necessarily more products, if that makes sense. I think the matter of scarcity and quality, despite the fact that I don't think price is not, I don't think price is necessarily one of the components that you should strive for in a brand, but I do think they are tied to the scarcity and quality. Just because if you have quality and you have scarcity, then you normally, as demand increases, your price goes up. But there's always the component of as prices rise, you will see demand sometimes growing as well. And there has been an experience on that end. There's the sort of the Veblen theory, and forgive me if I'm butchering his name, but it's an economist and a theorist, and he was in his research. He found that sometimes, depending on the brand, as prices rose, so did demand, because of the nature of that item, because the item was more desirable, was more luxurious. it was now more coveted by consumers. And there is a relationship between the price and the perception of the conception of an expensive item, which is sort of the snob kind of behavior that we see in society. And it's not to say that that whenever you're consuming something of quality and scarcity, you're consuming something that is relevant for you. But even if it's relevant for you, you might have that kind of relationship between the item that you're consuming, and we could say that for champagne, depending on the person. Um, the desire of consuming that product sort of is intertwined with the very your desire to perhaps be perceived as a more superior person in a way. And it's a very complex topic to jump into, and I'm not going to do that. But you do have, I do believe that you have those knobs that tend to consume high end and luxury products, not necessarily because they align with all the pillars, um, but just because they want to be as desired as they desire the product itself. So it's kind of an interesting relationship. And I think talking about the third pillar now, which is philosophy, I do think a lot of the consumers of luxury brands, part of those consumers, uh, are perhaps in that sort of snob category that just want to kind of, in an ostentatious way, display the product and what they're consuming. So failure to consume in due quantity and quality might be a sign of inferiority for those people. Um, but the bad, the foundation of a brand, of a luxury brand, can never be the snobs. It cannot be. If it is, then it's sort of a long term disaster, I think, because it will end up being perceived as, oh, okay, so only people that want to display this consume that brand, and then you sort of lose that appeal of luxury and scarcity, and something that is only consumed by very special people, if that makes sense. So the philosophy is something that is very important, since the bedrock of your brand cannot be those people, those kind of snob category. Then you need to really find a very good narrative, a very good philosophy, and that must be very, very aligned to what you're trying to sell. So typically, luxury brands will sell dreams. It's not so much about the product. So if you think of, for example, even champagne, if you think of Bollinger, Bollinger has been collaborating with, at least in a non-official way, with Hollywood, with 007.
Good evening. Can I get a bottle of chilled Bollinger Condamné and the Beluga caviar? Yes, with everything.
So the James Bond movies, there is an association between Bollinger and James Bond, and I think perhaps a lot of people consume and have consumed Bollinger for the first time, and maybe have kept consuming it because of the movies, because of James Bond. James Bond, Bollinger is James Bond's favorite champagne, so that alone is sort of selling that dream of that man that travels the world and lives a secret life and faces danger. Is a hero, that sort of dream. And you can see that in different brands. I'm thinking of Dom Perignon here. They've partnered up with Karl Lagerfeld in, when was that now? Years ago. It was a few years ago, but they did, and they partner up with supermodels, and people of, and I think they actually partner up with Claudia Schiffer at some point in time. So you can see that, yeah, it's not just about selling the product. I mean, there's only so much you can talk about. If you can talk about the details of the product, obviously, but that's not what's the most important part here. Is the story, is the philosophy that brand is trying to achieve. So an example of that, again, going back to Hermes. Hermes has this credo of craftsmanship above everything else. So it's not just about the you know the aspect the aesthetics of the product, um, um, but the craftsmanship is at the core of their philosophy and principles. In fact, they have a credo that is, if I'm not mistaken, I might be butchering that credo. Sorry, Hermes, but I think it's like one craftsman for one bag. So, which means basically you're going to have one person, one artisan working on one item. That is the pinnacle of luxury. You cannot beat that. And so Hermes clients, the faithful ones, are surely the ones to, well, obviously, first of all, they do have the means to consume Hermes, but also they must pretty much align with the vision that they're wearing something that is special, that was created by someone, by the hands of someone. The same thing if you go to Huntsman or Henry Paul in Savile Row, and you go through a bespoke suit experience, and you get all measured, and you have something that is completely done for you in a bespoke way. Um, I mean, it's very hard to beat that in terms of luxury experience. So it's the component of heritage as well. If you talk about Huntsman and Savile Row just in general, there is the component of heritage. You're consuming history. One interesting thing about those Savile Row suits and those tailors is that, and I'm not sure people are familiar with that, but once you go to one of these tailors and you start being their client, they have ledgers, and you pretty much enter history by being one of their clients. But the textiles, the fabrics the cloths that you've purchased will remain in the store in their vaults pretty much forever. So literally, your grandchildren can, in I don't know, in 50 years or 6 years, go to the same store. Hopefully, and hopefully they'll still be there. But that has happened. So people 80 years ago were consuming in those stores, and their grandchildren went to the store and like, oh my grandfather had used to make to have his suits made here, and then they have still cloths from those years. So your grandchildren might go back to the store and consume the same articles and the same cloths and fabrics that you purchased 50, 60 years ago. And that is incredible. That is in terms of experience, in terms of philosophy, in terms of the true representation of heritage. That is unbeatable, and that costs. That alone has to cost money, and it's justifiable in a way. I mean, it's not that the quality necessarily of a bespoke suit will necessarily again represent the price. The correlation is different, but it's a complete different experience. And so that heritage, that philosophy translated, or rather the product translating the philosophy of the brand is extremely important. So those three pillars that we were talking about, quality, scarcity, and philosophy, are the three main elements. There might be some other elements that are conducive to to being a luxury brand, but just in general, those are the main principles, the main pillars that a luxury brand must have in order to be considered a luxury brand. You may have quality and scarcity, but if you don't have a story behind your brand, are you really luxury? Not necessarily. You might have. There are brands out there that have a lot of quality, and do have some levels of scarcity that don't necessarily are luxury brands. And you might have brands that are, that have some other two. Maybe they have a great philosophy and a great narrative around them. They have great quality, but they don't have that element of scarcity. They haven't created that. Even if it's not a true organic scarcity, it might be a superficial, a man-made almost scarcity, but you have to have that element. And you might also have perhaps scarcity and philosophy, but obviously if you don't have quality, you cannot consider yourself a luxury brand. And so if you do have those three pillars, and you are a luxury brand, then the more you have of each of these pillars, the more higher up you will typically be, the more luxurious, the more of a luxury brand you'll be considered. And I think that's one of those cases that were mentioned here. Hermes being perhaps the top one here. Just for reference, as we kind of wrap up here, Hermes beats in terms of return on the capital investment, um, um, both Louis Vuitton, LVMH, which is a big group, right, and Kering, which is also a sort of a conglomerate of high-end brands, of luxury brands. So they beat every single year in terms of return on the investment. And Hermes is a family house, so there's also a component of philosophy there. Again, it's not just about craftsmanship; it's about the story, and being this kind of family-owned. They still have the majority of the shares of Hermes. The family still owns to this day the brand, and that is in and on itself a philosophy, a story behind the brand, right? So there is this to kind of wrap up our conversation here. There is this saying in one of these studies about just marketing and branding and kind of branding in general, but more towards the luxury branding, that says in luxury you communicate in order to create the dream and not necessarily to sell more. I might be butchering the sentence here, but that's the spirit of the sentence, and it's by Kepler and Bastian, two scholars of the subject, economists. And anyway, I think this sentence kind of represents well how luxury brands try to market. And if you ask me, the best way to market if you're a luxury brand, if you want to be a luxury brand, and you're kind of exploring different venues and different formats of marketing, I would say the best way to market your luxury brand is to sort of run a nuanced, delicate, sort of passive influencer marketing campaign. I think that would be by far the best way. Not something that would shout out, "Here we are, buy from us," but perhaps having someone that is very aligned with your story, with your philosophy, and that is perceived by the world as someone important, and collaborate with that person on a specific campaign, in a detail, perhaps a photo, a video where your product will appear, but not really shouting out loud, but just nuanced and delicately appearing on the screen. I think that would be, in my opinion, the best way to market a luxury brand. With that being said, this is it. I hope you have liked this video. Post your comment below. I think there's a lot that we covered here, a lot of brands that we were talking about. So if you feel differently about any of the brands that I mentioned here, I hope to see your comment on my YouTube channel, and subscribe if you like this type of video. I'll try to make some more of like this, not with the champagne, but talking about different aspects of both marketing and entrepreneurship. And yeah, I hope you have a great evening. I'll see you next time.